Saad?
Ready?
Yes, ready?
Good evening, listeners. This is Blessed Radio. It's Tuesday evening and it's just past 6 p.m. UK time. This is the Spiritual Discussion Program. I'm Saad in Southeast London, and with me, as usual, is Gregory. Um, Here in London, now overcast, so it's nice and sunny and warm today. Uh, how is it where you are, Gregory?
Just like you have in London.
Okay, good. Welcome. As I said, listeners, this is the Spiritual Discussion Program, and the aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message by Abdushin. And every week we have a new topic. The topic for discussion tonight is World Turning Point. World Turning Point. You are welcome to join in the discussion with any questions or comments by contacting us on our UK number, which is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. I'm going to begin with what is the Grail Message? The Grail Message in the Light of Truth by Abdushin is a spiritual knowledge of life. It offers an explanation of the world, a picture of creation on the basis of natural laws. Its lectures contain valuable basic elements as a help in life. For through the knowledge mediated, the reader is again brought closer to life and led back to God. The Grail Message deals with important fundamental questions of life by explaining in a clear and logical way the automatic working of the laws of nature, the whole weaving of creation, allowing every process to be recognized, and thereby the purpose of our whole life. It is directed at the individual and speaks to the innate experiences of the human being, their strengths and weaknesses. Thus, every reader has the opportunity to discover, through the intuitive perception, if what is stated is the truth. Combining with matter-of-fact reasoning, a complete world picture arises, where there is no separation between the visible world and the great world beyond the five senses, nor any separation between scientific and religious striving for knowledge. I'd like to give you a couple of quotes from the author of the Grail Message, Abdushin. The hearer and reader of my lectures should always work within himself, keenly probing and building bridges from one lecture to the other, as well as out into the great and small world happenings. Only then will he be able to understand the Grail Message and find that it gradually shapes itself into one complete whole without leaving any gaps. Again and again, in all the happenings, the reader will come back to the basic features. He can explain everything without having to change even one single sentence. The word of the Grail Message lives so that it permits only those people who really carry the honest desire in their souls to find abundantly. All else is automatically rejected by it. For the arrogant and those who seek superficially, the message will remain the book with 7 seals. And I'd like to give you one more quote from the author. I wish to fill the gaps which have so far always remained unanswered in the souls of men, and which never leave any serious thinker in peace if he earnestly seeks for the truth. So, dear listeners, just to remind you, the topic for discussion tonight is World Turning Point. You are welcome to join us with any questions or comments by contacting us on our UK number, which is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. Now, Gregory, as you know, I like to look in the dictionary for the meaning of the words in the topic. And tonight's topic is titled World Turning Point. So, of course, the first word there is world. And what I found there, well, this might be conflicting, but I'm going to read it here. World, the earth, together with all its countries and peoples. And yeah, let me, then another one they say refers to totality of entities, to the whole of reality, or to everything that is. It can also refer to the earth together with all its countries and peoples. So, Gregory, let's do it like this. What is the term that we are word what we are referring to for our discussion tonight?
Well, the discussion refers to or centers around the human personality. Therefore, that which we are able to perceive with our gross material senses, which are the 5 senses, is here on earth, and therefore it is then limited to that.
Okay, so in our discussion, we're only talking about the people on the earth.
Well, in the discussions, gradually it can be expanded. Otherwise, the nuances in these definitions can be very confusing. So it's maybe for a start, to start from a particular area, then it can be expanded. Else you have definitions which subsequently don't make any sense.
Okay, yes, thank you for that. So we, for good purpose of clarity, yes, we'll focus on the earth this moment. And Greggy, please, if I can ask you to be on mute while I'm speaking. So thank you for that. So, okay, let's move to the next word, turning. And again, in the dictionary, it says turn can have different meanings depending on the context. It can mean an act of moving something in a circular direction around an axis or a point, a change of direction when moving, an opportunity or obligation to do something when that comes successively to each of a number of people, and a short walk or ride or a shock. I'll just repeat that because there's a lot of things said here. So the word turning in the dictionary, there's actually even more, but I will just repeat this one. Turn can have different meanings depending on the context. It can mean an act of moving something in a circular direction round an axis or a point, a change of direction when moving, an opportunity or obligation to do something that come successively to each of a number of people. A short walk or ride or a shock. So, Gregory, I know I've said a lot there. Can you just say what are we discussing about in tonight's topic when we use the word turning?
The word turning itself gives a picture of a point of inflection, which is basically a point of change. A change from one state to another.
Okay. Thank you for that. I want to explore that further. Actually, what you just said comes into further meaning that I found in the dictionary. So let me go there. It says move. Let me go straight to change, cause to change in nature, state, form, or color, which, become or make. That's what they're saying. So you have mentioned, Gregory, in your words, state, changing of state. Now, but we are talking about human beings. So, as we started in this discussion, so what state are we, in reference to human beings, are you talking about? Change of state.
The whole topic must be considered in that particular reference. The context is what we must consider.
Right.
The change of states could be the change of states in their thoughts, in their deeds, or in their intuitions. So as long as we refer to this context of change of intuition, change of states in their thoughts or in their deeds, then one gets nearer to the whole point.
Right. Thank you for that, again, clarification there. And the last word is point. The meaning of point in the dictionary. There were so many meanings, actually, but I just picked out, let's say, 5 of them, which I thought were relevant for our discussion. And they say the meaning here in dictionary, it says the meaning of point is a distinguishing detail, the most important, essential in a discussion or matter, an exact moment, a time interval immediately before something indicated, and the last one is a particular step, stage, or degree in development. So, Gregory, again, there are 5 meanings given there, or aspects of the word point. Are there the ones I've mentioned there? Can you say that if they're relevant for our discussion again?
As a matter of fact, whatever is relevant to our discussion must be connected to a framework. So in that case, the word point must be taken with reference to the framework, which framework basically are the laws of creation. So when the word point or expression point is used, a picture arises. It is that picture in which form is not attached to it, but a state which is unique in itself. It is when form and size and all the different features are tied, that is when it becomes no more a point. So a point basically must be considered as a state in which form is not yet attached to it.
Thank you so much for this answer there, Gregory. So in a way, if I recap what you've said there, so the topic is world turning point, and the world we are in this specifically we mean Earth, and then relating to human activity as well, you can say, and then turning. We are talking about a state of our thoughts, deeds, and intuitions, and the point is the, if I'm right, is the that state we are referring to. So you could say change in state. So this is. I will ask you, Gregory. Would you like to sort of make like a summary, but what this meaning of this topic is meant to be for tonight?
Again, it's counterproductive when one goes about giving summaries at the beginning, because the need is there to examine the details, to examine the nuances. So starting with summaries is already limiting the details which we ourselves are to look into. What you have, a turning point, or the world turning point, presents a picture in which there is a change in the states. Which states could be man's perceptions with his thoughts, in his deeds, or in his intuitions. But there is so much that is tied to all this. And only when one gets into the nuances, only then will many appreciate what it's all about.
Thank you very much, Gregory, for again your answer there. And as we know, in every show we are building a picture, so I can fully understand what you're saying there. We don't want to say everything at the beginning because you need to discover it. So thank you for that. You could say reminder and answer that you've given. Now, obviously we're talking about human beings with their thoughts, deeds, and intuitions, and the change of state there. Now, it sounds that we know there are different states of them. So I'm trying to think, do we need to go into history, Gregory, to say how the early humans were, and then say how they have become? You can go through like that. Should we look at it that way to try to understand these concepts that you're talking about?
Not really. But okay. The question, it depends on the questions posed. And that is what determines how one responds to the challenges of a particular question. So, in that particular case, there must be questions which really, across many personality, which needs to be discussed, rather than because the framework of our discussion is question and answers, rather than answers and questions.
Right. Okay. So let me come up with some question for you there. As a starter, you could say. Okay. So we can say that if we consider only, let's say, these times that we live now, we know just now, Gregory, in the news, I'm just bringing this in because it's right in the news at the moment. Let's say there's very hot temperatures being experienced in Mediterranean and America and even China, and there's a belt across the earth that is happening, and they're saying this is due to climate change, these seriously high, uncomfortable temperatures, heat, and this climate change, of course, is due to the human activity of not really, you can say, working in harmony with the environment, putting out, well, they say CO2 before, that's what they used to tell us, that we are putting out, producing all these things which are not, let's say, compatible with the environment. And so I know that's not directly a spiritual question, but I want to ask there, it is deeds we have done there that have caused this sort of outcome of the weather, you can say, or has a consequence on the weather and the climate. Now, I'm trying to think on that. So is that, Gregory, something that we have done, you could say, knowingly? Because we know there's a law, every action, there's a reaction, there's a consequence. So would you say, Gregory, that one is, something that a man has, through his activity, done knowingly or unknowingly?
One is not sure whether these things were done knowingly or unknowingly. Whatever it is very clear that the activities of man has an impact on his environment or on our environment. If you take, for instance, the clearing of bushes, the building of properties all over the place, what you have is that nature, the way it was, there is a change in the vegetation. Initially, there was some balance in these vegetations, but in the exchange of what one may call oxygen, hydrogen, all this, but in the elimination of the vegetation, this causes all sorts of changes. These changes one may refer to as perturbations. So the activities of man, in which you have properties being built everywhere, one can say has an effect. So also the gas which have been released in the atmosphere, this also has another effect. So when the combined effects, the combined perturbations of all these, when they are considered, of course, it has an impact in that, because that which is produced, so-called maybe carbon dioxide and things of that nature, is unable to be utilized by the vegetation as quickly, and some of it is which is poisonous. Of course, that will cause a sort of imbalance in which you have the effects that we have right now. So it doesn't take a scientist to see what the effect will be. Common sense will already give us the solution that haven't, made changes in the way things were. There will be some effects. Which effects is what we are experiencing.
Thank you very much for that answer, Gregory. And as you were responding, another thing came into my head, which is that maybe the world population is, how can I say, multiplying, unsustainable rate. And again, you talk about balance. So maybe there's also something going out of control there, being human activity. that we are not in balance with the world, with nature. So can you comment on that one, or say something about this, Gregory, about the human beings on the earth being, becoming overpopulated here?
One is not quite sure whether the existence of human personalities, what they themselves consume, is what is causing the imbalance. The imbalance, because it is not the population per se, but the few who have access to resources. It is how they have conditioned these resources in such a way as to produce such gross imbalance. So there is much talk about overpopulation. That's a different category on its own. But the effects of man's activities, in the case where you have, cars being produced en masse, and you have other things which are consumed en masse, all these have a strong impact on the whole environment, rather than tying it to what one may refer to as overpopulation. If there are fewer cars on the road, like you have in the COVID, in which maybe mass transport via electricity, using electricity, that could make a whole world of change. So it's not very right to blame everything on overpopulation. But more studies, things have to be reflected very deeply before such conclusions are drawn.
Thank you again for your answer there, Gregory. Now, I'm trying to think again, what is driving human behavior or human activity to what we experience in these current times? So, you mentioned the three key sort of activity that human beings do, which is we have thoughts, and we do perform deeds, and also we have the intuition, which we have, let's say, discussed in many of our shows before, now. So, and you've sort of, with the 2 points I made earlier about overpopulation and climate, it's not necessarily about the total number of people that can be causing the problems, you can say, but it's the way we go about our activity that is resulting in the, let's say, negative impacts. So I'm wondering, what is happening to us, the way we are living. I mean, one of the things we know is science seems to be our supreme. We rely on science, let's say, in our decision making. So, but let's say people would want to say, "Oh no, science is to blame for this, what we have done," because they're thinking that is meant to be, improving our life. So, can I ask you, Gregory, about that? Has science got anything to do with, let's say, our losing our way somewhere, or in our progress of our activity on the earth?
Science is a product of man's activity. So when that activity is improved in accordance with the laws through which the human personality came into existence, then that product will also be efficient and will be of benefit. If, however, that is not the case, then it spells doom. So also it is with so-called signs.
Thank you for that answer there, Gregory. There's more to ask you, but before I continue, I want to let the listeners know this is Bless Radio, and this is a Tuesday evening spiritual discussion program. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message by Abdrusheen. And if you wish to know more about the Grail Message or want to get a copy of the Grail Message for yourself, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that. www.grail, Grail, message, message.com. And the topic of discussion for tonight is World Turning Point. You're welcome to join us with any questions or comments by contacting us on our UK number, which is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And we are broadcasting on Bless Radio 1. That's the number 1.com. You can also listen to us on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1. Again, it's the number 1 there. Space live stream. That's for the live show. You can listen to the recording of this show the next day, also on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1. That's the number 1 again. Space Grail Message, space, the topic of the show, which tonight is World Turning Point. And of course, you can listen to the recordings of our previous shows also on YouTube. Thirdly, we are broadcasting on Zeno. That's ZENO.FM/Bless Radio 1. That's the number 1 again. Now, Gregory, we've been reflecting on the human activity, in the current times. But, we're saying this is a spiritual discussion program. And we've been talking about, you could say, the earthly activity there so far, and the activity on the earth. Now, what about the spiritual aspect of human activity on the earth? What effect does that have, or impact does it have, or has been having even, in the, you could say, how we are living? Now, we know there are wars going on, economic troubles, which may not be considered really, let's say, directly related to spiritual activity, but there's those things happening. And you could say in any community, there's always families with squabbles and issues going on, things like that. So could you give a picture of that state? You've been talking about state, of affairs in this spiritual aspect of our human activity. Oh, Gregory, you're still on mute.
What you yourself are referring to is the states in spiritual affairs. The state in spiritual affairs, to grasp it properly, one must strive to understand what spirit is. Spirit is that, or the spirit of which man is made of, is that spark which gives him life. That spark may be referred to as energy, for energy is spirit, but spirit of a different category. Spirit that is capable of becoming conscious of the environment around it, and also capable of making decisions. In that case, if that is applied to the environment around us, which environment is not only that which we see in nature, but in the state in which we are, and also the states of the nations, the different nations and the individuals. If that is considered, then things are in a very sorry state. For it is through the intuition that the spirit makes contact with the thoughts of men, and the thoughts of men have an impact on the type of forms they then fashion, which many refer to as the deeds. Therefore, the sort of houses we live in, the sort of clothes we wear, the way we care to speak the language which we speak for communication, the mode of transport, all these are reflection of our thoughts. Therefore, one must understand that once these things are considered carefully, then, because the human personality has the free will to decide or not to decide, whichever one cares to call it, then you will have that the consequences of its activities is what we now have. Why is that so? Very simply, because everything, our thoughts are in motion, our deeds are in motion, our intuition are in motion, the world around us is in motion, and the cosmos is in motion. And therefore, it is only right to say that whatever exists must be in some sort of motion. For motion, therefore, is a law, not only in nature, but also in creation. Each personality must strive to understand this and examine himself or herself, for even the process of examination is a process of motion. Once that becomes very clear, then the next step will be to realize that basically there are only two forms of motion. The motion in which the end of that motion returns to the beginning, and the other type of category in which the end does not go back to the beginning. There is need for further clarification, which is made possible only through continuous examination. For even itself, the continuous examination is motion. So it must fall within one category of the end of the motion going back to the beginning, flowing back, or not flowing back. That scenario in which the end of the motion flows back to the beginning, that in itself can be categorized as a reciprocal activity. That being the case, one can now imagine the reciprocal activity that has accrued for man through its activities. These reciprocal activities, some of the side effects is what one may refer to as climate change or overpopulation, whatever one cares to call it. That is the case because it's in motion. Therefore, the reciprocal effect is a fact and therefore a law in creation, in nature. That things have to return to their origin gives the strongest impression that there must be something, a volition that pulls it back, that attracts it. That volition that attracts it back to its origin gives the strongest impression of that which is homogeneous in motion. Therefore, one may also have a second law, that of the attraction of that which is homogeneous. That is why it's attracted to the beginning. So, from motion, which motion is intrinsic in all activities, we have reciprocal activity, we have the attraction of homogeneity. Therefore, if in our activity, in our thoughts, which thoughts are also in motion, in their reciprocal activities, they will return to us that which deep within us we hold there, that we wish it to be. And therefore, when the returns get back to the personality, let him or her examine it thoroughly. Therefore, you yourself can already see within the earth here the reciprocal activities of our thoughts, the way we have cared to think. But it is good that many a person takes caution and strives to put things right, so that the pollution which have now accrued over time, as you have in the case of plastics, which have become ubiquitous everywhere, as you have in the case where forests are just decimated for their timber without planting new ones. These are within the thoughts of men, and the reciprocal activity is what is returned in different facets, in different forms, whether one calls it climate change or not. The thoughts of hatred and greed, the thoughts of acquisition, when analyzed carefully, in which one state wishes or longs after wealth of another and wishes to seize it. This type of thought produces confusion and war. That is what many are experiencing wherever the war is, where there is no patience, there is no understanding, but greed for gross material things. Whereas, should man live aright, it must be one for all and all for one. So, the state in which the earth is, the state which is conditioned by man through the gross material activities of man, through the thoughts of man, or through the intuitions of man, that can easily be perceived in what many now find or the current state of affairs that we have here on earth.
Thank you so much, Gregory, for your picture of human beings' activity on this, the spiritual activity, you can say. You covered a lot there. You talked about the law of motion and the effects flowing back to the beginning. If I'm not quite sure if that's what you said exactly, but somehow, let's say, returning. And what I got from that is that there's a cycle. Everything is a cycle, where the end meets the beginning, or it must complete a cycle, let's say. And when you don't do that, then there's some terrible consequences that we see. Just, we already mentioned about, the climate change, potentially overpopulation, and so on, and other issue, whatever it is, economy, whatever it is, overuse of resources or result, or abuse of the resources, having an imbalance suddenly, and then obviously things are not continuing, in a productive way. So this is very, very clear. So you can say there's a law of motion, like you already mentioned, but at the same time there's a law of cycle there as well. Now, and it's connected with nature, the laws of nature, or laws of creation, as you also put there, which must be not only recognized, but must be obeyed, you can say, or aligned with, in harmony with them. Otherwise, you can see a lot of, you already say we come through nature. So, of course, if we don't align with it, then not to be surprised when it gives us a difficult time, because we don't align with it. So I'm thinking now, all these things you mentioned, it looks sort of, I was going to say obvious or clear from our life, our history, that this is how we have to be. But somehow, Gregory, it seems like we seem to like to go astray. Well, I don't know if we say we like to go astray, but we do seem to go astray regularly, and suffering the consequences of that. Like we said, war and environmental dangers and even in each communities, whatever that happens, arguments or whatever, lack of peace and harmony. So I'm wondering, is there something about human beings that make them stubborn or not wishing to align with nature? We want to think we are superior to nature, maybe. So is there something with the special, I don't know, special, but something happening with human beings that they seem to go, I use the word astray, but that sound, they go mistakenly astray, but it's not a mistake, isn't it? We somehow seem to have some I don't know, illness. Last week we talked about the self and mental health. So, is there something, let's say, wrong with human beings that they can't seem to go with nature?
Basically, you will find that the lack of understanding of the basic laws of nature, how these laws apply to not only to gross material events or happenings, but also to our thoughts, and also to our intuitions. Many a time, some persons on their own harbors such terrible, such terrible chimeras in their thoughts. These thoughts, when it has an impact on those who are not very strong, or on those who reflect alike in their thoughts, these thoughts gather. They gather in accordance with the law of motion, the law of creation, which we had referred to as the attraction of homogeneity. For these thoughts are in motion. In the gathering of these thoughts, they fuse together and subsequently they condense. Many a person who may not be very strong-willed or strong enough, these thoughts have an impact on such weaklings. If it's the thoughts that is akin to the subjection of other people in wickedness, just as you have in war, then you have that a people, or first a group of persons who wish to show off their strength, now initiates a war which is completely unnecessary. Therefore, you find in such a scenario, it's as if such persons or group of persons suffer from a complex, sometimes referred to as inferiority complex. But the way it manifests is that of trying to breathe down on the throats of another, forcibly wishing that their own deeds must be done, forgetting that each personality has a free will to decide. That's adage, one for all and all for one, is completely thrown asunder. But before long, the tables are turned. So what you find is that you have the scenario where a particular personality or a group of personalities that run a nation or a nation itself has been primed through meaningless talk, meaningless rhetoric, to believe some things, and they hold on to a belief which is never examined rigorously, a belief which is never examined in accordance with the laws of motion through which all came into existence. And that is what you have in the case, whether it be of wars, whether it be of disagreement, whether it be of religious misunderstanding or scientific understanding, these have only arisen from that same call where movement, where motion have slowed down, and the scenario where there is no rigorous investigation, no rigorous examination, no rigorous weighing, not weighing in an arbitrary or examining in an arbitrary manner, but weighing in accordance with the laws of motion, that in which the beginning or the end flows back to the beginning, and in that case, the attraction of homogeneity and that of reciprocal activity. These are the things that the human personality must, again and again, weigh in their deeds, in their thoughts, and in their intuitions. As long as the human personality that is granted the free will to decide doesn't do this, then there will be problems. It has to do it whether it's in so-called scientific, religion, or even in the arts. It must, else it's unable to proceed in harmony, in peace with its neighbor.
Thank you very much for your answer there, Gregory. And you could say explanation about how human beings, have lost their way or are not using their abilities, let's say, in the proper way that it is meant to be used. Many times you have said all for one and one for all, but somehow it doesn't seem to appeal to sufficient number of people for us to, have that, you could say, love for all. There's somehow the majority, or let's say a specific amount of people have enough power to turn against this all for one and one for all. So, it doesn't seem possible to, for the majority to have the right direction, you could say. There's more I want to ask about this in a moment, Gregory, but before I do that, I just want to again remind the listeners, you're listening to Bless Radio. This is the Tuesday evening spiritual discussion program from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message by Abdrushi. And if you wish to know more about the Grail Message or want to get a copy of the Grail Message for yourself, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that, www.grail, message, MESSAGE.com. And we are broadcasting, the topic for you tonight's discussion is World Turning Point. World Turning Point. You're welcome to join in the discussion by contacting us on our UK number, which is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39641958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And we are broadcasting on Bless Radio 1. That's the number 1.com. You can also listen to us on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1, the number 1 again, space, live stream. That's for the live show. You can listen to the recording of this show also on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type it, and that's the next day. So go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1, that's the number 1 again, space, Grail Message, space, the topic of the show, which tonight is World Turning Point. And of course, you can listen to the recordings of our previous shows as well, also on YouTube. Thirdly, we are broadcasting on Zeno. That's ZENO.FM/Bless Radio 1. That's the number 1 again. Now, Gregory, we've been talking about, our spiritual activity on the earth and going astray. It's not, as you said, a sorry picture of what the state of affairs of human activity in the spiritual, aspect. Now, Gregory, when we are born and brought up on the earth, we go to school, and then we take exam, and then some people after school they go into their careers and so on. From there, others study further, maybe university, and apprenticeship, and they're always tested. All this time they're being tested. Now, I'm wondering, Gregory, what about getting trained and being tested on our spiritual, how can I say, activities and learning there? It doesn't seem there's really a test for this, a training or testing going on there. So shouldn't that be happening? Or because if you have to go to school and learn, or even going to having a trade, you have to learn those things. So how come we are not having this training and learning for our spiritual life?
The structures that man has established here on earth, that is what has conditioned the way many respond to. That which is of spirit has an impact on the thoughts of men, which subsequently have an impact on the gross material activities of men. That which you yourself do not yet have, or you yourself haven't yet cultivated, that you cannot impact to another. Therefore, many who have not, in a spiritual sense, developed themselves in such a way so that they understand how they must interact with their neighbors, interact with their neighborhood, interact with nature, because they themselves haven't spent any time in such observations, although cognitively there have been events in their lives that have touched them, pointing along such directions that will enable many a person to open up in their intuition and be more deeply reflective of that which exists gross materially. Man only needs to observe that that which is gross material, that did not come on its own, but must have been made to be either through the thoughts of men or before they incarnated, it was already there. Such thinking will make many a person to reflect further that here on earth, that which is referred to as vegetation did not just come just like that. That forces, of course, made it possible. The volition that made these possible, these forces that are responsible, the beings that have participated to enable these, which is gross material, albeit nature, the vegetation, even the earth itself and the sun. Only when one reflects along that direction, that is, one is in their reflection, striving away from the petty, everyday, horrid life, only then will they come to appreciate that which made things possible here on earth. Unless you yourself reflect on these things, unless you yourself get involved in the investigation, first, not only gross materially, but in your thoughts and also in your intuitions, unless you yourself engage in it, one cannot make progress in that direction. So also with the coming of man on earth, which one refers to as an incarnation through the womb of a woman that has prepared this such that man will now be born. One, there must be some reflection along that direction. So also with the transition, a turning point of man, in that case where the gross material physical body is discarded through the process called death. Unless the individual has always reflected intuitively about it, in his thoughts, he or she will not make progress in that direction. And not making progress in a direction or collating the facts which one has experienced in order to share it in the form of one for all and all for one, it becomes very difficult for one to give instruction to another on things which he or she has not reflected on or knows nothing about. Whereas that which is gross material, which many are able to see, they can talk about it because the effects are easily available. So the problem has always been there. That problem could be that of indolence, not wanting to be a pioneer in silent reflection, be it in the case of religion or even in science. Many are satisfied to believe, but they themselves lack the conviction, which conviction only comes through inflexible weighing, inflexible examination. Therein lies the challenge which many refuse to take on.
Thanks very much, Gregory, for your explanation and picture about the human beings' sort of journey of, you could say, exploration about life, in or the way it is meant to be done, you can say, and the way it has been done, which requires, as you say, weighing and examining continuously. In fact, Gregory, you mentioned the indolence, how man has been and human beings have been in their life. So, but as I mentioned when I started that question, Gregory, that we go to school to learn these other life skills, if I can say, how to work and so on, or study, and then you apply it in our work and so on. But this one about, you could say, the spiritual life, let's say, because I was asking about training and testing. It seems that is the life itself is the learning arena for that, rather than passing exam. So, and it all, from what you're saying, everything is on us individually, not in any sort of collective human society. So, but Gregory, we know there have been teachers, spiritual teachers, prophets, and so on, sent to this earth over the, you could say, thousands of years, and giving the teaching. I know there was no exam there, but there was a book or teaching sent out, let's say, through the Creator even. Because that the concept of God, for example, I'm not too sure human beings would be able to even think of that one by their own sort of assessment. So there have been these teachers. What are you saying? We shouldn't take account of what they have brought in our understanding of spiritual life? We just have to do everything our own self?
Whatever spiritual, in quotes, teachings that many have brought, if those teachings do not resonate with the laws of creation, through which creation itself and subsequently man came into existence, or with the laws of nature, then the activities that springs in creation, in nature, man will not be in a position to recognize these activities. So each of these teachings must be examined and weighed in the sense of using one's intuitions, using one's thoughts, and also using the gross material capabilities which has been granted to man. Only in that way will the teachings, if they resonate with these laws, only in that way will it come to life. Else, it will not come to life. It remains only a belief in which the volition behind that belief is unable to push the human spirits towards maturity. There must be personal examination. Now ask yourself, of all the so-called spiritual teachings that are out there, are they examined in accordance with the laws of creation? If yes, then you will find that those who do that are striving along the same goal. Which goal will lead to the maturity of their spirit? Because these, like you classify them, are spiritual teachings or teachings which should help the individuals to mature. That the evidence is there that these teachings are not examined. That already tells that many only hold beliefs, and these beliefs are not alive but dead. For only when you make use of that which has been granted you, only in that case will you strengthen yourself. Else, you are still very weak. So, these teachings must be examined. If the teaching cannot be examined, or if man is too weak or too fearful to examine the teaching, then it will bring him or her no benefit here or hereafter.
Thank you so much, Gregory, for this answer there. Now, just to remind again everybody and us as well, the topic tonight is world turning point. And we said at the beginning that in covers the human activity on the earth through thoughts and deeds and intuition. And I will say, I would like to now go into that. We are saying there's a world turning point, or maybe there's more than one world turning point, because you haven't really focused on that so much up till now. And I'm now thinking, Gregory, I want to talk about this more now, and I'm looking at that. So what is, and it's about state, or our state in these aspects of thoughts, deeds. I was going to say words, but I can call it words as well. Thoughts, deeds, and intuition. So what I want to ask you now, Gregory, what is meant to be happening in that regard about our state of thoughts, deeds, and intuition? Is there some stages that we're supposed to go through?
That which man observes here in gross matter with his or her five senses, that is the outermost. Subsequently, one should also understand that man has thoughts. This is self-evident. And man's thoughts have an impact on gross material happening. If that is not the case, how come we are discussing? Don't we reflect, don't we think about it before we say it? Don't we prepare for war like you have going on? Don't we prepare for war? Don't we think about it? Therefore, the thoughts are ubiquitous, which have an impact on how we move, on our motion, in conjunction with all other motions here on earth, even in the universe or in the cosmos. The thoughts are there. So also man's intuition, which intuition has arisen from the inner core of man. To know the states of man's thoughts or intuition, one merely needs to look out of the final effect of the use of our intuition or the lack of use of our intuition, of the use of our thoughts or the lack of use of our thoughts, and also on the gross material precipitation of all this, on the effect it has on the gross material happening, or the lack of effect. So that immediately gives an idea where the intuition of man, that intuition which has arisen from out of the spirit, which spirit has the sensing of its home in the paradise of man, sensing or knowing that it has set out from its origin, from its home, in order to experience. You consider the case of two people who are in a foreign place. In their discussions, they find out that they are from the same hometown. How joyful they become. They support one another, one for all and one for all. They do not ask questions because there is that innate affinity that this particular person is from the same hometown as myself, albeit gross materially. The same thing goes when you go out in a foreign place and meet some other person whose thoughts are alike, being of similar thoughts, that already brings the two of them together. The same thing happens to one's intuition, where the intuitions are similar, equivalent. Those people gather. These are the effects of motion, which effects came into existence in the attraction of homogeneity. That being the case, that the individual senses that they are from the same home, albeit in the spiritual realm, then they know that they are foreign to this area of nature in the world of matter in order to experience. Immediately, should they not come together, embrace, support themselves, one for all and all for one, wanting to work together, to serve together, to mature together in such a way that before long they may go back home as self-conscious human personalities who know the task that they need to perform. That is what is supposed to be. Were that the case, there will be no war. Were that the case, you will not have these climate problems in which you have greed and all sorts of eccentricities producing this type of thing. So, the states of man, spiritually, in his thoughts, in his gross material deeds, are well reflected in what man experiences nowadays.
Thanks again, Gregory, for your explanation there. what we can see that here is that human beings or man has to really learn to use the abilities that he's been endowed with, and apply them properly with the simple philosophy, if I don't want to use the word philosophy, but with this, how can I put it? The phrase is not the perfect way to put it, but you say all for one and one for all. So with this, there has to be the focus of what we are, what is our aim, you can say, and but it's somehow, Gregory, all of this seems to be something we have to discover. We are unconscious of these things, and somehow, yes, it makes sense. It's like common sense, you can even say that that's how it's supposed to be, but still somehow needs to be, you could say, embedded in us fully, that we may keep that as a focus, now this journey of life, So now, Gregory, earlier I mentioned about cycles. Everything is a cycle. You said there's law of motion, there's motion, everything is a motion. That is also definitely, of course, true. And then, but there seems to be also cycles. Everything is a cycle. Now,
Sorry.
Yeah, go on.
One stressed that in motion there are two categories. The category in which the end of the motion returns to the beginning. Therein you have cycles and the attraction of homogeneity. There is the other in which the end does not flow back to the beginning. Therein one may categorize that as in the case of gravitation. That is a different discussion for some other time. So one cannot say everything is in cycles. There are two different categories, which categories have been well outlined.
Thank you for that, you could say, clarification there. Now, my point of this was to ask was the way humanity is moving forward, or even retrogressing. In a sense, we can see the consequences already, the climate disasters and sort of happening, and so on, which is happening all on the earth. And then, there's we mentioned that we are spiritual beings, which are maturing. The aim is to become more mature, self-conscious beings. So what I want to know, Gregory, what's the consequence on that? If we can see on the earth, what are the consequences with our earthly activities? Does it mean, Gregory, we will suffer death on the earth and the end of the human race, and in a way automatically extinguished from as a spiritual being as well?
Thanks for that particular question. What's the scenario again must be examined in accordance with the laws of motion, the laws of creation. The start, the beginning, man started as an unconscious spirit seed grain. If he or she were matured spiritually, then there will be nothing for it to learn. There will be no need for this journey. But because it was unconscious, spirit, seed grain, the need for consciousness strikes it, and therefore the need to move out in order to experience, such that consciousness and subsequently self-consciousness will be developed. In that particular scenario of the development of the seed grain or the spirit seed germ, it needed to move out into those areas where the movement and the temperature or the fastness of things in this region that has made it impossible will not be there. That means it needed to come to the slower regions and gradually experience, adjusts itself, matures, and becomes conscious of the environment. In that case, it starts developing the stature of man, the figure of man. And subsequently, when he strives to become or becomes self-conscious, that is, the self means it is now awake. Those innate abilities which have been sown in it have now awakened and ready for activity. Just as it has been supported, as it has been endowed with all possibilities, just as it has been supported, he himself is now in a position to be of help, to be of support to many who will be coming subsequently in order to undergo that process to become self-conscious. That being the case, that becomes the task for the human personality. But you should know that in this process, it has come to the world of matter, which is temporal. In that case, there is the starting point of the different parts in the world of matter, in which there is the initial seeds, which then unite to become denser and in order to form possibilities where man will have to experience. And that this goes on just like you have when a grain of corn is planted in a field. It doesn't mean you keep planting this grain of corn in the field again and again forever. There comes a time in which that field is exhausted and needs to be left alone. In this case, in the maturity of man, you have the scenario in which that particular field in the world of matter, that particular realm, needs to come to a maturity and subsequently to revert back, to disintegrate to its primeval substances. By that time, it is expected that the human spirit seed grain that came to experience would have experienced and matured and gone back home to its permanent home as a self-conscious human spirit. If, however, it's unable to do so, and it is held up in the world of matter, in the sense it has not shed off those things which hold it down. It has not shed off all those ignoble activities which tend to hold it down. The possibility then is when the world of matter, or that part of the world of matter, undergoes disintegration to its primeval substances, the human personality will experience that. In that case, it will experience the pain and it will lose the structure which it had gained so far. Therefore, it will have to return back to its home as it had started, as an unconscious spirit seed grain. In that case, the efforts, the time, the energy granted, and the resources granted has been in vain. That is what the human spirit then has forced on itself. The teachers that had come to the earth thought about this and warned many a person to walk very quickly, such that when that time arrives, or before that time arrives, it must have severed itself, having matured in accordance with the will of Him who placed the laws in creation. So it becomes very clear how the human spirit needs to move. Much of what is, should be, and how the human personality needs to wander in this world and in the beyond, that is in the work, which work is in the light of truth, which work talks about light and talks about truth. It explains what light is. It explains what truth is. And in the longing after light and truth, the personality is drawn up as long as it exerts itself so as to mature. That work in the light of truth, the message from out of the grail, the message from out of the highest point in creation, out of creation, through which power streams, which power the human personality is able to make use of. That is what the message is. And it is hoped that many a listener will make the effort to examine for himself in order to gain conviction.
Thank you very much, Gregory, for this explanation and about the spiritual path and journey that we human beings have been going along, and how can I say, the consequences of our activity on this earth the spiritual consequences are given in what you've just said to us. And as Gregory has just mentioned, if you are interested, if you want to know more and have knowledge of these activities of human beings in this creation, we refer you to the Grail Message. And if you want to get more information on the Grail Message or want to get a copy of the Grail Message for yourself, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that, www.grail, Grail, message, message.com. And you're listening to Blessed Radio. This is a spiritual discussion program from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time. The topic we are discussing tonight is World Turning Point. World Turning Point. You're welcome to join us with any questions or comments by contacting us on our UK number, which is 07939 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And we're broadcasting on Bless Radio 1, that's the number 1.com. You can also listen to us on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1, that's the number 1 again, space live stream. That's for the live show. You can listen to a recording of this show also on YouTube the next day. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1, get the number 1 there, space Grail Message, space the topic of the show, which tonight is World Turning Point. And of course, you can listen to our previous shows also on YouTube. Thirdly, we are broadcasting on Zeno, that's ZENO.FM/Bless Radio 1. That's the number 1 again. Now, Gregory, you mentioned some spiritual teachers that have brought, who have come to guide us and direct us. You can say, to get to save us. You say, to falling onto the. You could say, I'll use this word, road to hell, from falling into that road, and really bring us to the road to heaven. Actually, is what their real aim is, and so now I want to go into that a bit more. Now, it is said that Jesus said that unless a man is born again, he cannot enter the kingdom of God. What does this mean, Gregory?
You yourself use the expression being born again. Being born again only means the renewal. That means the views and the inner attitude must resonate with these laws, which laws particularly that of the attraction of homogeneity, of that of reciprocal activity. As long as the inner attitude resonates along that line, then this inner attitude, which is an inner state of his intuition, which intuition have refined the thoughts. That means they have a strong impact on the thoughts, which thoughts now have a strong impact on his gross material activity. That means the inner attitude is reflected in the gross material attitude. So you have one's intuition, one's thoughts, and one's gross material activities are resonating, are in tune. Then, in that particular state of affairs, the human personality, the spirit, is able to ascend. For as it strives to live accordingly in support not only of himself but to others, as he receives of the streams and blessings, he makes use of these blessings and helps others with it or passes it on. So will others who are more matured than himself pass on more blessings through him, and in that case, he will be attracted closer, upwards, step by step, and before long, he will arrive consciously as a self-conscious human personality back home. Then he would have arrived in the kingdom of the Lord Almighty in the spiritual realm.
Thank you very much for this answer there, Gregory. Another, let's say, concept that we are told about in these spiritual teachings is about judgment, or last judgment, or judgment day. Now, how does that come in? Because some people think or understand that first you must die, and then judgment day one day will happen for all of us, and then there will be, in that judgment day, if you have done the good, or you have redeemed your sin, then you go down into heaven or kingdom of God, we can say. Or if you don't pass this judgment day, or you succeed in passing the judgment day, you go into hell. So can you tell us how is this, where does the judgment day come in, or how does it work, judgment day?
Again and again, these questions have arisen which have to be addressed. Strictly speaking, there has always been blessing with the streams of power through creation, through nature. And the human personality is to make use of these streams spiritually, make use of these streams of power in thoughts, and make use of these streams of power in deeds. In making use of these streams of power, there are returns in accordance with the will of the Almighty. It is these streams of power that help the human personality to rise, or if they don't make use of these streams of power, he or she will sink. The world of matter, or the world of non-matter, of which there is also the ethereal, or what we call the animistic, and finally that which is spiritual, in which there is also motion, which motion we had already categorized that there are returns or reciprocal activity or the attraction of homogeneity. This already paints the picture that In this world of matter where things are slow, there comes a time, like was mentioned initially, where the world of matter, parts of it, not all at the same second, need to undergo disintegration. In that particular scenario, you will find that all that a man had sown needs to return to it. That means all from the beginning of its journey, that which it has sown in the world of matter, that he himself has not yet experienced the effects, these need to flow back to it so that he himself can experience it. If those returns are pleasurable, are of benefit to it, because it has sown well, then these returns will make it buoyant. If that is not the case, in this particular scenario, in a world that is first going to go through disintegration in the gross material sense, then you find that it is stuck. And the likelihood is that it will be caught in the activities here in the gross material world and will have to undergo disintegration. That point of inflection, first spiritually, that point, turning point spiritually, which is also a point in which that which he himself has done spiritually, it's returned to it, or the lack of spiritual activities also is considered. If they have been of benefit, that will make it to ascend. So there is a point of inflection in spiritual activities. There is a point of inflection or a turning point in ethereal activities. These ethereal activities are non-spiritual, are non-gross material. So there is a point of activity in spiritual, point of inflection also in the ethereal, and a point of inflection in gross material activities. These are the turning points which have been mentioned. And it is only a precursor of what is to happen. First, the spiritual would have taken place before you now have the ethereal and finally gross material. So these are the different types that the human personality need to consider. And these points of inflection, that means of the returns of their activities, giving account of that which has been granted it. That is what many refer to as the judgment, which, strictly speaking, is no judgment, but a blessing. Only he or she fears the judgment who had wasted its time and energy in this world of matter, or in the ethereal, or in the spiritual. That is why it is advisable for many to seek diligently that which is of spirit, to mature spiritually, such that when the returns of former deeds arrive, these deeds will have met or will meet a person who is reformed, that is born again. For only then can they enter the kingdom of the Almighty, of their Maker. Else, that judgment will hit it so hard such that it will revert back to the original as an unconscious spirit gem, because it forced this last judgment on itself.
Thank you very much again, Gregory, for this explanation for the judgment of the last day judgment. Thank you for that. Dear listeners, we've come to the end of the show tonight on the topic of world turning point. And we covered a lot in tonight's discussion and hope you enjoyed it. I want to read now. Obviously the aim of the show is to introduce you to the Grail Message in the Light of Truth by Abdul Sheen. And so I like to read from the Grail Message the foreword, which is titled For Your Guidance. The bandage falls and belief becomes conviction. Liberation and redemption lie only in conviction. I'm addressing earnest seekers only. They must be able and willing to examine this matter objectively. Religious fanatics and irresponsible enthusiasts may hold aloof, for they are detrimental to the truth. As for the malevolent and prejudiced, they shall find their sentence in the very words. The message will strike only those who still carry within them a spark of truth and the yearning to be true human beings. It will lead them unswervingly out of all the chaos. I'm sorry, I missed a line. I will say that. To all such, it will become the shining light and staff. It will lead them unswervingly out of all the chaos of the present-day confusion. The following word does not bring a new religion, but is intended as the torch to help all serious listeners or readers find the right path, which leads them to the longed-for height. Only he who bestirs himself can advance spiritually. The fool who uses extraneous aids for this, in the form of ready-made opinions of others, only walks his path as if on crutches, while ignoring his own healthy limbs. But the moment he boldly uses all the abilities which lie dormant within him, awaiting his call to help in his ascent, he is employing the talent entrusted to him in accordance with his Creator's will, and will easily overcome all obstacles that seek to divert him. Therefore awake. Genuine faith lies only in conviction, and conviction comes solely through an inflexible weighing and examining. See that you are truly alive in the wonderful creation of your God, Apushin. And just to let you know, listeners, if you are interested to know more about the Grail Message or want to get a copy of the Grail Message, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that, www.grailmessage.com. Thank you again for being with us tonight, listeners. We will be back as usual next Tuesday, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time with another topic. Gregory, anything you want to say to the listeners to say goodbye?
Wishing all listeners a very beautiful week.
Thank you. Same from me, listeners. Have a great week. We'll be back as usual, as I say, next Tuesday. Good night. God bless.